First of all, let's start the application. We will be using Docker Compose built into the repository. You won't be using Docker Compose in real life. You will deploy MongoDB and the application separately, but for the sake of the demo, this will be sufficient. Docker Compose is very handy when you want to try out the application locally and see if it fits your needs. Let's now refresh the page. The application is up and we are going to log in. Application supports multiple login authentication providers, so we can implement your own or use existing one. First, we will create a project because the project is the main entity of the whole system, and everything that you will be creating, test suites, test cases, test launches, will be created under the project. They will inherit project configuration. So we've created a new one, and we can see that the dashboard is empty as we don't have anything in the project. You can have multiple projects in the system. A standalone service or a big part of another service is a good candidate for a project. Now let's create a test case, our first test case in this project. It's pretty simple. Just click Add Test Cases and fill up the form. Here's our first test case in the project. Let's have a look what it has. It has a title, description, preconditions, and of course steps and some attributes. We will talk about them a bit further. Let's have a look what test case can have. It can have steps. Obviously, when you do testing, you do some kind of a step and then you verify it results. So you can do the same here. You can have multiple steps in the test case, which is pretty typical for the system like that. Steps, descriptions, and preconditions feature rich text editors, so you can design them as you wish. You can add multiple steps, which is pretty obvious. And of course, you can edit and delete them. Let's have a look. What else can we have in a test case? You can have attachments. You can attach any types of files to your test case. You can link issues from the issue tracker to your test cases. You can have comments and you can see the history of the test case, whether it was modified or executed. Now, preconditions. Preconditions is something that you have to do before you start executing the test case. Now let's create some more test cases to have a better view how this all works together. Now we have a list of test cases we can play with. Attributes are probably the most important entities in the system. Let's have a look what it is. Imagine you have a project and your project can have different attributes like a severity or a functionality or whatever you want to split your test cases by. Let's add some attributes as an example. Let's say we want to split our test cases by functionality. So we are adding an attribute to the project which is called functionality. And we can have different values. It can be an authentication. Authentication is a functionality. It can be a test case. Test case is a functionality of our system. It can be a test suite. It is a functionality of the system we're going to test. We're going to test our own TestQuAck system. We can have other attributes as well, which are, let's say, priority. We want to split test cases by priority as well. They could have high priority, medium, and low priority. But we are not yet done. Let's say we want to split our test cases by the placement. The place where they can be found on the screen. It can be header, footer, or a body. You can have your own custom attributes which suit your product needs. Let's have a look. We have functionality, we have priority, and we have placement. Of course, you can edit and modify them at any time. We have attributes configured in the project, and let's add values to the test cases. It's simple. Add an attribute, select what attribute you want to add, and select values that you want to assign to the test case. For example, this test case is all about authentication. It has high priority, and it is located in the body. Let's pick another one for an example. Another one will have different sets of attributes. It will have a functionality which will be called projects, because this test case is related to the project. It will have medium priority, and it will be placed once again in the body. Let's try another one. It's pretty much the same. It will have a functionality projects, because it is related to projects. It will have a low priority or a medium one, whatever. And it will be also placed in the body. And now let's go through other test cases and add some attributes to them. So we would have a better overview how those attributes work. In this last example, we will show you that you do not have to add all attributes available in the system to the test case. You can add only few. In this case, we are skipping functionality. Now we have our test cases filled with attributes. Let's have a look how we can use them. Attributes are made to filter out test cases and to group them into a tree. A flexible tree that you can rebuild anytime you want, any way you want, any depth you want. Let's have a look how it is being done. First, let's group our test cases by functionality. We will select functionality and attribute in the grouping and filter. And you can see that test cases are grouped in a tree by their functionality. Of course, you can use any other attribute to group your test cases, and you can do it on the fly right here. You can group your test cases by several attributes at a time. In that case, you will have a tree of a bigger depth. Let's add a priority. And now you can see that you have two levels of the tree. The first one is a functionality, and inside the functionality, test cases are grouped by priority. Let's add a placement. And now we have a tree with a depth 3, and inside the tree we have groupings by functionality, then by priority, and then by placement. You can build any tree listing any attributes you want in any order you want. This allows you to build flexible trees at any time you want. Now let's filter out some test cases. You can do that by selecting specific attribute values. For example, we want to list all test cases that have high priority. You can do it through filters, and you can see that you retain the tree structure and you have test cases filtered by priority high. You can add as many filters as you like. Let's now filter out those that are located in the header. And now you can see that there's only one test case that corresponds to the filter and grouping. You can combine filters and groupings as you wish. For example, let's reduce this tree size. And now, let's reduce the filter. You can save filters and groups as test suites. Remember, you are not saving a copy of test cases in a tree, you are just saving filters and groupings. So if you will add a new test case to the system, it will appear in your test suite. You can skip to the test suite at any time. And of course, you can have multiple test suites as much as you want. Test cases are created to be executed. So, QuaK allows you to launch your test cases, either from the test suite or from the tree that you just built. Or it can be just a plain list of test cases that's for you to decide. Let's see we have a test suite and we want to launch it. Just specify the launch name, which is not mandatory. You can specify environments and launches. We will talk about them a little bit further. Launches can be run by multiple engineers at a time. You can start a test case. You can mark it as passed, failed, broken, or you can skip it. When you fail the test case, you can enter the resolution which will be shown in the test case history and commands. Let's walk through the launch we have and run test cases as if it was in a real system. You can alter your results if you need to. After the execution, you can either rerun the whole launch again, or you can just rerun failed test cases. You always can get back to the test suite you used to create a launch. Let's now rerun failed test cases. Here we've got a launch which is created only from those that were failed. Happily, this time, this test case will pass. The list of all launches is also available. You can filter them by name, by time, or by launcher type. You can fine-tune your launch. You can deselect the tests that you don't want to see in your launch. Let's create another one, a reduced one. Here you can see that you have only few test cases, those that were selected. Let's go through the launch and finish it. Thankfully, it's very easy to do. On the launch page, you can see some statistics about test cases in the launch. This statistics is built out of the attributes of test cases that took part in this current launch. You can search your launches by name or by date and time, which is really convenient if you want to analyze some past executions. When you filter desired launches, you can have an overview of the statistics of those launches. It will show you the overall heat map of test cases. It will show you the activity of users who took part in those launches, and some statistical data that can be useful for further analysis. QuaK analyzes test cases that were flaky in your launches, and you can just go to the heat map and turn off test cases that fail all the time. This will mark those test cases as broken, and they won't be included in launches. They will be marked as skipped. You can later on filter out test cases that are broken, fix them, and turn them on again. Filtering is being done through broken attribute which is built into the system. For example, we have two broken test cases here. We filter them out, we fix them, and enable them again. Now let's have a look at project configuration. What can be configured on the project level? First of all, you can configure permissions. Permissions can be granted by groups or by users. QuaK supports multiple authentication providers, and those groups and users will come out of authentication provider. It can be a built-in, say, Jira authentication provider, or it can be your own if you have your own home-built authentication system. You can enter default environments for your project. In that case, you would be able to select those environments when you create a launch, or you can create a launch for all environments at once. In this case, multiple launches will be created, one per each environment. For example, in this case, we will have operational systems. Some test cases, whether they are manual or automated, sometimes have to be executed in a separate system. And Launches is a pluggable system that allows you to plug in external execution systems. QuaK has some of them built in. The first one is a request launcher. This will just send a request to external system that you configure when you create a launch. Another one is a Lichen launcher. Please have a look at Lichen project in our repository. And the third one is Smith launcher, the one that allows you to launch Java-based test cases in the cloud serverless. Let's have a look at environments. Let's select two of them, and those two environments will create two launches, one per each environment, which is very convenient if you have multiple environments to run test cases on. When you create a launch, you can select a launcher that you configured in your project, and you can override some properties there. In this case, it will fail because we do not have external system that will respond correctly. It is a responsibility of the external system to upload results to QuaK. And of course, you can have multiple launchers in your project. Alternatively, you can implement your own launcher for your own system if you have one. It is pretty easy.